The studio felt charged that evening, the way it always does just before a live conversation begins. Lights glowed warmly, cameras settled into place, and the audience carried that familiar mix of anticipation and comfort, expecting charm, humor, maybe a story they could smile along with. Everything appeared routine, almost automatic. Yet before a single question landed, something quietly shifted. The guest sat still, hands loosely folded, gaze lowered for just a beat too long. It wasn't dramatic or rehearsed, it was human. In that brief pause before performance could take over, the room sensed it. There was something heavier than usual being carried into the conversation. When silence becomes the message. When the host asked a simple question about love, the silence that followed felt unplanned and honest. It stretched just long enough to make people stop breathing for a second. Then came an answer spoken carefully, without polish or protection. His voice was softer than expected, thoughtful rather than confident. There was no attempt to entertain or impress. He spoke not as a symbol or a public figure, but as a person choosing truth over comfort. In that moment, silence did more work than words ever could, drawing everyone closer instead of pushing them away. Honesty without performance. "We don't talk enough about how love can end, even when it was real," he said simply. The statement wasn't shocking, yet it landed with unexpected force. Perhaps because it wasn't framed as wisdom or advice, it was offered as lived experience. There was no smile to cushion it, no joke to soften the edges, just honesty, delivered without drama. Across screens and seats, people stopped multitasking. Something about the calmness of his tone invited attention. This wasn't a confession, it was a reflection. The weight of being seen as an example for years. The public had seen him as part of a reassuring story, one that suggested stability, commitment, and endurance. People pointed to it as proof that love could last, that partnership could survive time and pressure. From the outside, it appeared effortless. Shared smiles, public support, moments that felt warm and grounded. But love, as he gently revealed, has dimensions no camera captures. What people see is the surface. What they don't see are the quiet negotiations, the personal changes, the moments when two people grow in different directions without realizing it at first. Love doesn't always end in failure. "I gave everything I had," he said, pausing briefly, "and so did the other person." There was no blame in his words, no bitterness, just acceptance. He spoke of love not as something that breaks because it's weak, but as something that sometimes changes because life changes the people inside it. That idea rippled through the room. It was comforting and unsettling at the same time. Love could be real, deep, and meaningful, and still not last forever. A truth many people live with but rarely hear spoken aloud. Remembering the beginning. As he spoke, memories surfaced. Not just his, but the audience's as well. First conversations that felt electric. Long nights where time disappeared. That sense of finding safety in another person. Love often begins with certainty, with the belief that this is something permanent. Standing at the start of a story, it's easy to feel that way. Time, though, has its own rhythm. It introduces chapters no one plans for. It doesn't erase what came before, it reshapes it. The quiet guilt of letting go. He admitted that the hardest part wasn't the ending itself, but the guilt that followed. Letting go of something meaningful can feel like betrayal, even when it's necessary. Love rarely disappears all at once. It fades in small, almost polite ways. A conversation that doesn't happen. A silence that lingers. Two people sharing space but not connection. These moments don't announce themselves. They arrive quietly until one day they can no longer be ignored. What endings cannot take away. The hardest part, he said, eyes catching the light, is accepting that an ending doesn't erase what came before. The love wasn't wasted. It was lived, fully, sincerely, beautifully, for the time it was meant to exist. That realization moved through the room without sound. Some nodded, some looked down. Others felt something loosen inside their chest. Endings, he suggested, don't cancel meaning. They mark transitions. A room that felt understood. When the conversation ended, the reaction was immediate and unexpected. Messages poured in, not with judgment or speculation, but with gratitude. People shared their own stories of love that didn't last, but still mattered. Some said they felt seen for the first time. Others said, They finally had words for something they'd carried quietly for years. What began as a personal reflection became a shared experience, opening space for honesty in a culture that often demands perfect endings. Beyond the headlines, headlines tried to frame the moment as surprising or dramatic, but that wasn't what stayed with people. What lingered was sincerity. In a world built on polished narratives, he chose imperfection. He didn't offer solutions or closure, he offered permission. Permission to grieve without shame, permission to acknowledge love without rewriting it, permission to accept that meaningful stories don't all end the same way. Alone. After the lights fade. Later that night, when the studio noise had faded, memories returned quietly. Laughter, arguments, promises whispered in the dark. Love had shaped him, even in its ending. There was ache, yes, but also gratitude. Gratitude for having felt something real, for having shared a chapter that mattered. I'm not broken, he thought. I'm changed. And that realization brought a sense of peace. When vulnerability connects strangers. In the days that followed, letters and messages arrived from people he'd never met. Some shared stories of relationships that ended gently, without drama, but with deep emotion. Others spoke of loss, growth, and acceptance. Many said they felt less alone. He realized then that vulnerability creates connection. By speaking honestly, he had given others a language for their own experiences. Redefining the meaning of love. Love stories, he came to understand, don't always end with forever. Some end with lessons, some end with respect, some end with heartbreak that eventually softens into understanding. That doesn't make them failures, it makes them human. Love doesn't lose its value because it changes form. It leaves behind growth, clarity, and the quiet knowledge that something meaningful once existed. Carrying the truth forward. As he stepped into the next chapter of his life, one truth stayed with him. Love ending doesn't mean love failed. It means it was brave enough to exist. Somewhere out there, people still believed in love. Not because it lasts forever, but because even when it ends, it leaves something real behind. And sometimes, that is more than enough.